This is a video about alcohol and substance abuse in the Oneida Nation community of Wisconsin and how it affects our quality of life. We will be interviewing community members who have found recovery. In 2017, behavioral health saw more than 1,000 patients with substance abuse issues.
How do I notice it? Well, I just look at the amount of bars. I look at the amount of liquor stores. I'm very observant too, so I can kind of see people's, their demeanor, their energy, or their vibe. And I do notice that, like, a lot of times when I see some of my Native brothers and sisters that, like, they may be intoxicated, or if I drive past some bars, not even on the res, I see some Natives out there.
Well, in our community, I see drinking and substance abuse present everywhere. I see a lot of Native women in jails. I see people going through withdrawals. I see people stealing and doing things they normally wouldn't do. I see Natives walking down the street drunk. I see just a lot of sickness everywhere.
Substance abuse and alcohol use in my community is very much present. It's been a big problem, an epidemic. It is a very sad and disheartening, problem in my community, and not just mine, across the whole U.S. And but I think more so in Indian country, just because with the higher rates of use among Native Americans, and that's sad. It's a sad thing, and especially when it comes to my community, just as being in recovery, I know the struggle. So I'd just like to see those that are out there struggling get the help that they need. So.
How I see alcohol abuse and addiction being present in the Oneida community is by just the number of bars in the area. Personally, in my family, I've seen a lot of loss with my family members, also friends and acquaintances that I had when I was in active use. Also, just every time there's a Packer game, it seems like there's a lot of tailgating going on, and family occasions, birthday parties, anniversaries. It always seems like alcohol or addiction also is like a main part in those activities.
Wisconsin's 22% rate of adult binge drinking is third highest across all states. Wisconsin women of childbearing age consume alcohol at levels higher than their national peers. The economic impact of excessive alcohol use in Wisconsin costs $6.8 billion annually in lost productivity, premature death, health care, criminal justice, and motor vehicle accidents. Excessive alcohol use in Wisconsin costs approximately $1,200 per person annually. Oneida Behavioral Health funds approximately $350,000 per year for adult residential care. Bemidji funds approximately $87,000 for Oneida adolescents per year. Continued use for the person who is addicted to drugs and alcohol eventually overwhelms all parts of their life.
My life before recovery was chaotic, super chaotic, very negative, dark. I lived a very lonely lifestyle. Initially, when I started using drugs and alcohol, it wasn't so dark. It was kind of fun. I was experimenting. I was getting to know, I guess, the ins and outs of that lifestyle. I was using it to party, and then over the years, it became something that was like necessary. I became physically addicted, as well as mentally addicted to a lot of these substances.
My life before recovery was, like the example I'll share is like an avalanche. It was just everything just going downhill. As I was pushing away everybody that meant anything to me, you know, anybody that I loved, that loved me. And I seen that firsthand, you know. When I look back at it, now I can see, like, man, you know, I see what they mean when you're struggling with drugs and alcohol. You know, nobody wants to be around you. You know, you're burning all your bridges. You know, and I had gotten to that point where nobody wanted to help. You know, because I wasn't willing to help myself. And at that time, you don't really care. You know, I didn't care. You know, I was just like, if you don't like what I'm doing, stay out of my way. Stay off my path.
My life was horrible. For many years, it was just survival, day to day. How am I gonna feel good today? Just miserable. I just needed it more and more. And it felt good at first, like anything did, but my life became miserable. I did things I never thought I would do for drugs. I lost my job. I started stealing from my job. I lost my job. I started stealing from people. I lost my kids shortly after that. I guess when I lost my kids, I lost everything, because they were always the most important thing to me, or so I thought. And then it just got worse. Just did more and more. And even the people I used with, I remember telling them, aren't you guys tired of this? Don't you get tired of using? And they've been doing it for years. I couldn't take it anymore. I think I was on heroin for 6 months, and going through the courts, about to lose my kids forever, is when I decided that this is enough. And I ended up locking myself up in Brown County Mental Health. I told them I was a danger to myself and other people, and I went through really horrible withdrawals there. I would have using dreams. Remember being in the bed there and dreaming that there were drugs on the outside of my window, but I couldn't get it. But as soon as I got out from there, and I was there for about 10 days, as soon as I got out, I was feeling great. But I just didn't have the tools yet, so I got a phone call from one of my using friends, and right away I used.
With continued use, they lose personal goals and dreams. Their values and health deteriorate. Often, relationships with the people who matter most in their lives are destroyed. People who are addicted eventually feel constantly out of control and can no longer manage their own lives. The drink or the drug drives the very thoughts in their mind. They experience increasing physical illness as well as emotional and mental distress. Eventually, they will always feel sick.
The things that motivated me to get help was definitely my mental state was primarily the number one reason I sought recovery. Also, you know, my family too was a huge motivation. My son, I had only had one child at the time, and my son, and he was taken out of my custody at birth, so that definitely was a huge motivation. But I would mostly say it was me, you know, and me just wanting to finally just be done with, you know, that dark place in my life, and just the suffering that went with it, the mental agony, and also the just the all-around life experience that I had was horrible. And so I knew, you know, with previous experiences of recovery, but I was never able to keep a good amount of clean time and also change my life, but I knew that it was possible. So then that's when I decided to come to behavioral health, Oneida Behavioral Health, and then I got a counselor, and then I started doing the intensive outpatient treatment.
Motivation, I would say my kids, my family, was not going to have my children grow up without their mom. That was not going to happen for me. But not only that, myself. I couldn't live being so miserable every day. I mean, I'm so happy now, and I have so much passion in life, and that's just living in addiction is so miserable, and I couldn't do that anymore.
What motivated me for treatment was mainly my children. Alcoholism and drug addiction, runs in my family, and it's something that I seen when I was younger with my parents, and I guess I just, I wanted to break that cycle so that my kids didn't have to see that. They'd seen enough, especially my older children, obviously, because they'd been around it longer, and I just wanted to be that change for them to see that, it can be a good life. You don't have to live a life with drugs and alcohol in it. And so they were my main motivation, my family, trying to be, a better person in my community, was another motivating factor for me. So, but mostly my children.
Last incident that I had, I was going to UW Oshkosh to play football, and I kind of went down there after moving from Green Bay down to Oshkosh in one of the dorms, and I thought that if I moved out of Green Bay, I would stop using, and because I thought it was the people I was hanging around with. So I went down there, and it lasted like 2 weeks. I was sober for 2 weeks. I started going to the bars down there and hanging out with people that used and drank all the time. So I went to football practice one day, and I was under the influence of alcohol. And we were doing a tackling drill, and I tackled someone and kind of vomited on the ground. So after practice, they asked me to come into the coach's office, and they had the campus PD there, and they breathalyzed me, and my alcohol level was over the legal limit. So got suspended for the whole season for playing football at UW Oshkosh, and then I kind of just was upset about it and kind of just in denial with my whole addiction and stuff like that. So I ended up just dropping out of school completely. Then I went to my sister's house that lives in Oshkosh, and on Saturday I just got some alcohol and just ended up drinking all day. Got into an argument with her and got arrested by the Oshkosh police. Ended up staying in jail for the weekend and kind of got maximum lockdown, so that gave me time to think about everything that was going on in my life and how it was kind of like a trend, and it was kind of like insanity, just doing the same stuff over and over and trying to like expect a different result from it. So I had the 3 days that I was in jail to kind of think about what was going on in my life, and if I wanted to keep going down that vicious cycle or if I wanted to go and change it. But then still, even when I got out of jail, I still was in denial, and I was like, I'm just going to do the easy way out, and I'm just going to get the pills that you can take, and you'll stop drinking and stuff like that. My mom called me and kind of told me I had two options, either to go into a treatment facility or she was going to sign me in by third-party petition. And the one thing that she said to me was it's time to grow up and act like a man instead of a little boy. So that really ticked me off when she said that. So I kind of got angry when she said that, and I was like, I'm going to show you. So I kind of went into treatment, not because I wanted to, but it was because they told me I couldn't do it. So I was like, I'm going to show you guys that I can. So I came to behavioral health in Oneida, and I had a counselor here before I went to school. and talked to her and told her what everything everything that happened and stuff. And I told her I needed to get into a 28-day program or a 3-month program, whatever it was at the time. So she suggested Jackie Nitschke Center. And I was to the point in my life where I was like, I'm willing to do anything to stay sober, because all the stuff that I was losing wasn't just like objects or anything like that. I was losing friendships, and my family didn't want nothing to do with me and stuff like that. So at that point I was like, I don't have anything else to do but this. Like there was no other alternative route or anything like that. So I went to Jackie Nitschke in June of 2017.
Services I received was the intensive outpatient. Also had a counselor by the name of Pat Pichette, who had passed away a few years ago. And you know, Pat was he was very instrumental in my recovery. You know, I still think about him and wish he was here, you know, to see me, because he had a lot of faith in me. Pat had a lot of faith in me, and that was at a time where I didn't have a lot of faith in myself. I was clinging on to life, you know, barely clinging to life. And you know, Pat was someone that called me out, you know, when I needed it, and he was someone that encouraged me when I needed it too. And I could sit there and I would be talking to him, because it started with me just meeting up with him one-on-one, and we were trying to figure out a game plan for me. And so, you know, I had all these ideas, and you know, I've always been somewhat well-spoken, so Pat picked up on that. And so I could, you know, I think I was, you know, BSing him and telling him, oh, I don't need this or I need that, and he would just sit there and be like, okay. And then at the end he'd be like, yeah, no, I don't believe you, or that's a lie, or this is what you should do. I don't think you should do that, you should do this. And I really needed that. I really did. So we had decided initially we were going to do an intensive treatment. They were going to send me out to Keystone. And during this time I was initially seeing him, I started to go to 12-step meetings on my own, because I also was, you know, part of that throughout my earlier attempts at recovery. So I knew that I needed to do that. I knew that they were going to push me towards that eventually. That was going to be the goal. So I started doing that on my own. And so I did that, and then he's just finally decided to let me just do that, and then the intensive outpatient, which was 3 times a week. So I ended up completing the outpatient, and then I did the aftercare, and I did that for about 2 or 3 months. But during this time I was also doing the meetings. I had got a sponsor. I was working the 12 steps, and so I started to change and grow in a lot of different ways. And I kind of realized with my sponsor that I didn't really need the aftercare. I felt like there are other people that could use that, and so I ended up dropping out of the aftercare, but I still kept up with my meetings and my step work and stuff.
I did the inpatient, the 30 days of inpatient treatment through Keystone in South Dakota. That place really changed my life. I learned so much about addiction and how it affects my brain and how my brain can trick me into using. Learned a lot about it, and I had a great program set up for me when I did return from Keystone. I think it was 6 months of outpatient. And I think without that, I would not have been successful.
Some of the services were, I came in to see my counselor that I had at Oneida Behavioral. She got in contact with a few different treatment facilities to see if they had open rooms or open availability. Jackie Nitschke had 1 spot open. So she contacted me, and I had to do an intake questionnaire or like an interview on the phone with Jackie Nitschke. They kind of just asked me how much I drank, how much was my drug use, how often, and kind of the frequency of how much I did it in a week. So I gave them all the answers that they needed, and then they said that I qualified for residential treatment instead of just outpatient or inpatient.
The services I received for as far as recovery was the outpatient services, and they were the ones who referred me to the inpatient. A lot of men's groups. Remember when Ken Inham was still here? He was my counselor, and I am very much thankful for him. He was a good mentor and counselor. But just about any group that was offered here at Social Service Behavioral Health, I was a part of at one time or another. But mainly when I got in recovery, I took it very serious. Did my inpatient, came out, did my outpatient, attended all my groups. And like I said, it was for the betterment of probably close to 2 years. And where I finally completed all my programs. I had been in outpatient, God, probably since I was 15, 16, I'll say, and never really actually completed a group fully. So finally, to complete all of them was like a big, I don't know what to call it, completion of, just finally completing something. So
we are fortunate that the Oneida Nation has several resources available to help them with their addictions. We have behavioral health, social services, self-sufficiency, the fitness center, Oneida Adventures, cultural heritage, support group meetings, community health center, and support of our tribal action plan. With Oneida being within Brown and Outagamie counties, as a resident, you also have access to further resources. Individuals who are addicted become burdened by huge financial costs, risk or loss of employment, loss of freedom if incarcerated, and loss of relationships with family or partners. Some individuals only decide to quit using once they are experiencing life-threatening medical problems and fear of imminent death, or they have experienced multiple overdoses and have come very close to dying. Getting clean and sober is a multi-step process. For many alcoholics and addicts, it takes years to shift from being abstinent to actually enjoying a healthy, sober lifestyle. Along the way, there are many hurdles to overcome, some large and some small. Recovery is supported through relationships and social networks. An important factor in the recovery process is the presence and involvement of people who believe in the person's ability to recover. People who offer hope, support, and encouragement, and who also suggest strategies and resources for change. The best way to approach your loved one's recovery is to remain supportive and loving, understand what he or she is going through, and be on the lookout for warning signs that your loved one may be struggling. If your loved one does relapse, it doesn't mean they can't achieve sobriety again and maintain it. It just means they may need more help and more practice in adopting a healthier lifestyle. Start talking about it, understand resources, and be supportive of someone in their recovery efforts. Celebrate recovery. Be healthy role models. Take time to learn more about the disease and support the Tribal Action Plan initiative. If you see someone struggling, inspire them to get help. Recovery is a lifelong journey for the addict. It isn't always a straight path.
If they're going to get help, I would tell them to first, want it within themselves, want to get clean within themselves, to seek either inpatient treatment, outpatient treatment, to also seek any 12-step program. I would tell them to go to meetings. I would tell them to get a sponsor, contact that sponsor. I would also tell them to work the 12 steps. I would tell them not to give up hope, and to hang in there. It can be a little tough, but at the same time, it's worth it. Nothing worth having is easy to obtain, so sometimes you just have to hang in there if you know you're having doubts or if you're having cravings or whatever issues you may go through in early recovery, to just hang in there, find some supportive people, contact those people, and stick with them.
The advice I would give somebody going into recovery would be to be strong and accept help, to know that it's all right to ask for help, and because a lot of times, you know, people going into recovery, they're either afraid or ashamed of asking for that, saying that they have a problem. And that would be my best advice, is to just own it, ask for that help, and then put in the work. You know, and to get into recovery, it takes a lot of work, just like anything else. And you know, it's in recovery, it's 1 day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time at those most trying moments. So I would just encourage others looking to follow this path to just accept that help.
The advice I would give someone would be just go into the treatment facility that you choose with an open mind, and just be honest about everything that happened in your past, because even though you did do some wrong things or whatever the case was, you gotta understand that this is a disease that you're fighting, and everything that you did do wasn't the real person that you are today. Just don't hold up any boundaries or anything like that. Just let everything out and let everything pour out. Because the people at the treatment centers and the facilities are there to help you get through what you guys would be dealing with, just like I was dealing with and still am.
The goal is a future filled with achievement and joy.